This week, The Manchurian Candidate from 1962, a political thriller. An American POW in the Korean War is brainwashed as an unwitting assassin for an international communist conspiracy. Why don't we just show our scores? We'll start this thing off with our scores.
On the count of three. 1, 2, 3.
We are starting to clone.
Wow, we're close. I have an 8.5,
and
Debbie.
I have an 8.
This is an important film, not
Really
only
famous.
in film history, but United States history. The discussion about being able to brainwash people into doing someone else's bidding.
And of course, with all brainwashing, with an assassin that's coming, to the America, they have to have a trigger. Mm-hmm. So there was a trigger that Raymond, all of a sudden, when he's home, he's acting normally and all normal, but then there's a trigger that gets him to go into kill mode.
Right. Angela Lansbury, she's in this film. Incredible performance.
Unbelievable.
As we later find out, as the story unfolds, we know Raymond Shaw is the sleeper cell that was brainwashed by the communists, by the Chinese and the Soviets. And his mother is part of the mastermind of this invasion of the U.S. government. So he's in a position now where he's instructed to go, and at the point where the speech is delivered, and she delivers it so well,
that he finishes the phrase, "Nor would I ask of any fellow American in defense of his freedom that which I would not gladly give myself."
Raymond's going to shoot the presidential candidate. Before we start our episode, I want to give thanks to the City of Elizabeth and especially Mayor Christian BOLLWAGE.
As well you should.
On behalf of the Real Watch List Plus and Bold Media Films, we want to give a heartfelt thanks to the Mayor and the City of Elizabeth for allowing us to film this episode in a stunning, historic Elizabeth City chambers. Your support gave us the perfect backdrop, adding depth and authenticity to our production. We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you, Mayor, for preserving such a gem and sharing it with us. Stay tuned. There's more to come on the Real Watch List Plus.
First of all, I'm going to do a little bit of Frank Sinatra. He always, they say he got the part by his godfather, and from here to attorney. But since then, he was such a powerhouse. He had so much weight in everything because of his singing, because of everything, his connections.
Right.
And he read the novel. He paid for the film rights, which probably weren't a lot of money back then. And he hired Frankenheimer to direct, which was really smart. And start watching John Frankenheimer movies. You're going to get a delight out of them. They're really good. I really love his stuff. His salary was the biggest expense on this whole picture.
Yeah,
it was $1 million he got.
And the budget was $2.2 million.
Correct. And Laurence, and it left only $1 million for everything else. That was pre-production, the crew, the other cast, marketing, you name it. And everybody was scared of Sinatra, but in spite of his reputation, everybody thought he was great. And Janet Leigh was his friend outside of here. She had a real rough time because when they did that scene in the train, she was served divorce papers. They didn't even wait till she was out of the scene. They walked up and gave her the divorce papers. And it was just amazing that she could even do this scene.
Do you think there's some hanky-panky with her and Frank?
No. She said she was a little bit intimidated and scared of Frank, but
Everyone
she was surprised how much. Well, he always had, they were afraid to get a hit on him. Well, look at, they said he was charming. He did 1 million retakes. He was very professional. He showed up on time. He was kind to everybody, so I guess your reputation can proceed.
Yeah, but he also had this one-shot clause in his contract.
Yeah, he did.
That you had to do his scene in one shot and he wouldn't do retakes.
Right.
It got to a point where there were some scenes, two in particular I like to mention. One was the scene where they are being brainwashed, and there's the white, black, and the communist scene. And part of his contract was every day at the dailies, he wanted to see his scenes before he left.
Yes.
And in that scene, it was so difficult to edit that, Axelrod, who was the screenwriter, George Axelrod was a screenwriter. He's like trying to explain this is difficult for us to do it. And as he says...
Well, Frankenheimer didn't want him to see it, but when Frank said, I want to see it, they were scared because they thought, okay, if we don't show it to him, I'm going to go home and have my legs broken at 10 o'clock tonight.
In an interview, Axelrod said, but Sinatra insisted, and in a voice where you felt your kneecaps were going to be broken.
Right, so, yeah, that's the exact quote. Yeah.
So they quickly put it together. The irony is that scene that they showed to Frank was the one that ended up in the film.
Angela Lansbury, this is her most remembered role, and she's great. She was a great singer. I saw her in Mame on Broadway twice, Sweeney Todd, but this was iconic. She's the most famous puppet master, they call her, in movies. And she's the one that if you say, have you seen Manchurian Candidate, the original, everybody go, oh my God, Angela Lansbury. That's the first thing people say. And it's so true. It was just like, I think she's done everything. I mean, right to Murder, She Wrote, for goodness sakes. But it was like the apex of her whole career.
So why was she the supporting actress and not the leading actress? Because she got the Oscar nomination for supporting.
Yeah, and she lost to Patty Duke and The Miracle Worker, which was filmed in Middletown, New Jersey, and on Red Hill Road, right by my grandmother's place. I don't know. You don't know what
Can I put a guess out there?
About the Oscars.
I want to put a guess out there because this all plays into the whole, Frank Sinatra influence. That's why I found this fascinating in this research. Well, Lansbury wasn't Sinatra's pick initially, and JFK actually asked who's going to be the mother. Janet Leigh ends up being the girlfriend. Janet Leigh's
person.
She's got this whole hype with Psycho.
Right.
She's friendly with Frank. She gets the role of the girlfriend, and at one point they actually looked at someone else being Lansbury. Lucille Ball was supposed to be.
Oh yeah, I don't. She would have been okay because it's
and
cool
that's who
when
Sinatra
somebody
wanted
shows
because
the dark
again
side.
he was Sinatra connected.
Yeah, yeah, I think she would have been okay. Have you seen a lot of Lucille Ball movies? She was okay. She could be serious. You're thinking of like eating a candy on the line.
So but so this is some tea I want to drop on you. Lucille Ball, Frank Sinatra wanted, didn't get it. Lansbury gets it. Fast forward, Lansbury leaves, goes back to Broadway, goes back to theater. She gets Mame. She's now known for the Broadway production of Mame.
Right, saw her in it.
Fast forward again, there's a movie production of Mame. Who gets it?
Lucille Ball.
And Lansbury wasn't even asked to be.
See, that's how they get each other. They give the old stab under the ribs.
Right, and the funny part was B. Arthur, I don't know if you know, I'm sure you do, was in the Broadway play and also the movie. And when Lansbury was interviewed, she goes, they never called me, but B got it.
But they do that a lot.
Yeah,
they do that a lot.
stab.
Laurence Harvey was really interesting. He was a British movie star. A lot of British movie stars back then in the day were, he was a Lithuanian, believe it or not. And he was one of the biggest stars in the 1960s. And there was American New Wave cinema, but there was English Wave cinema, which was Albert Finney, which we did Tom Jones before.
You know he was closeted?
I did know that, yes. Okay. So he died from stomach cancer, and he was another one that was super friends with Liz Taylor. Liz Taylor had Montgomery Clift. She had all these people that were like in Hollywood kind of weird, or had careers that ended. Look at Michael Jackson, all that stuff. But anyway, he was a really good actor. I thought he was perfect for the part.
He was married a couple of times. And Sinatra's driver did a memoir many, many years later and talked about when he would drive Laurence Harvey around, he was in love with his manager. So they had this sidebar affair while he was married.
The leading man,
Richard Condon, who's the author of The Manchurian Candidate, the novel came out in 1959. And the themes of paranoia, brainwashing were all part of that decade or decades of like thought within the government, within, the communists versus, the United States. And they found out many years later that the CIA was using brainwashing. It was called Project MK Ultra. And they were trying to brainwash people like drug addicts, homeless people that were like very low in society, and using techniques of giving them LSD.
Well, that was a big thing with the government. They had where they jumped out of the hotel window because they had wanted to see what LSD did after Timothy Leary and all that stuff.
Right, and they actually found out years later, a Canadian TV program discovered that the United States government was paying a doctor out of Canada to try to brainwash, basically wipe out your brains, keeping you awake for 27 hours, having you sleep, but also trying to keep your brain waves awake.
Right.
Erase everything you have and try to bring your new
Well, they've
thoughts
done
in.
it. They do it even. Look at Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. They did it to him at Harvard, for God's Harvard.
There's also a theory that Sirhan, who assassinated RFK, Robert Kennedy, was part of that sleeper cell, that he was actually
Could be.
brainwashed.
We don't know that much about Sirhan. But you know how it was the Cold War and our parents were all scared and everything, and we were just playing around and doing stuff. But you know who termed that phrase, Cold War?
No.
George Orwell, who wrote 1984. He coined the phrase the Cold War, infiltrating and subverting American society.
As far as the movie itself, I mean, it did fairly well in the box office. The budget was $2.2 million. Box office take was $2.7 million. It was critically acclaimed with many of the critics out there. And the term Manchurian Candidate became part of our English language and pop culture. Anyone, whether it's in animation or in jokes or just discussions, anyone that uses the terminology Manchurian Candidate knows it's part of brainwashing, sleeper cells. So it had such an impact, not just the novel, but the movie itself. Angela Lansbury, who we know,
Yes, I do know her.
said Sinatra was a caring, giving actor willing to rehearse indefinitely, taking direction, contributing ideas to the whole movie. True or false?
I say true.
False! You're
Come
wrong!
on. I did the research and they said he was great. Everybody loved him. He was professional. Where are you getting this?
So that
Off
was
a
said by
bazooka
Janet
rapper?
Leigh. Do you know why? Because Frank Sinatra had in his contract that he had to do all of his scenes up front, and the only scene that he was with Angela Lansbury is during the conference, the meeting that they had, where Senator Leigh gets up and they bump Frank Sinatra, Ben Marco, Major Ben Marco, and Lansbury bump into each other in the cloakroom.
Well, you know, from now on, whatever I think, I'm going to answer the opposite. That's what I'm going to do from now on. Because you're getting this hierarchy, this mountain of Debbie doesn't know, and you can get it plastered on the screen, and you can do like this with your feet and get all excited.
So do you know in that scene where they used karate and jiu-jitsu to fight each other, Frank Sinatra does that chop scene on the wooden table. He actually breaks his pinky, and forevermore, Frank always had problems with his pinky.
I just didn't buy Frank fighting like that. I don't know.
No, Frank would knock the crap out of him, take a bat.
He's more like a cocktail and a cigarette, you know, rather than fighting.
Like Batman, I was waiting for the powers and all that stuff. Like,
I know.
Please, that took it down. That's what took it down a notch for me on my score. Frank Sinatra is out of focus in his close-up where he confronts Raymond with the Queen of Hearts. They look at Raymond. He's all sweaty. He's kind of in a zombie-like state. Frank Sinatra's trying to break the spell of the brainwashing, but he's out of focus. Critics loved it because they thought that the scene where you get the close-up of Frank was Raymond's view of Frank, that kind of like blurry scene.
And that technique's been done in a very famous movie called Demon Hunters Fear the Silence.
But it was a mistake. It actually was a mistake. It wasn't done purposely. So the director pointed out that because Frank had this one-shot take in his contract, he asked Frank, can we do it again? Absolutely not. So it stayed in the movie, and all the critics were like, oh, this is so great. So
he said, absolutely not, or I'll break your arms and legs. Isn't that the direct quote?
All right, audience, it's your turn now.
Here it comes.
Answer in our comment section, and we'll give you a shout-out in a future episode of The Real Watch List Plus. Here we go. In The Manchurian Candidate, Frank Sinatra plays Major Bennett Marco. In real life, though, what branch of service and rank did Frank Sinatra serve in the military? Don't answer that question, Debbie.
I don't want to answer the question. All right, well, my watch list this time is all about espionage and intrigue. Number one, The Man Who Knew Too Much from 1956. An American doctor and his wife, a former singing star, witness a murder while vacationing in Morocco and are drawn into a twisting plot of international intrigue when their young son is kidnapped. Stars James Stewart and Doris Day, a.k.a. the singing star, and it's directed by Alfred Hitchcock. not one of the, it's one of the top Hitchcock films, but not like, you know, the main ones we all have to see. The Conversation from 1974, Francis Ford Coppola, intellectually well-received film starring Gene Hackman, who plays a paranoid surveillance expert who has a crisis of conscience when he suspects that the couple he is spying on will be murdered. Number 3, I just watched this last week again, great film, 7 Days in May, 1964. United States military leaders plot to overthrow the president because he supports a nuclear disarmament treaty and they fear a Soviet sneak attack. Stars Burt Lancaster, Kirk Douglas, Frederick March, and Ava Gardner. They star in the political nail-biter, also directed by John Frankenheimer. Number 4, Marathon Man, 1976. After the murder of his older brother, a New York history student is hounded by a shadowy government agent on the trail of a Nazi war criminal, played beautifully by Sir Laurence Olivier, who is trying to retrieve smuggled diamonds. A famous movie line is remembered for, "Is it safe yet?" And you'll have to watch it to see that reference. And number 5, The Ipcris File. From 1965, in London, a wisecracking spy investigates the kidnapping and brainwashing of British scientists while dealing with the constraints of his agency's bureaucracy. And the wonderful Michael Caine leads that cast. And that's my watch list, Joe. Why should we watch it? It's a classic and political thriller cinema. It explores themes of Cold War paranoia, conspiracy theories, psychological manipulation, and brainwashing in this iconic film. I do love the Denzel picture who stars in the remake, but it's a tepid version of the original. There's no clear-cut villains or heroes, blending complexity of character in this. There's no clear-cut people as heroes and villains, except the mom, maybe. And the film provokes thought, suspense, and the fear of politics in America.
Something like this affects pop culture, affects our government. And since we're talking about the change in presidency, it's something that I think everyone should just, you know, not maybe with a critical eye, like I was looking at all these little problems, but, you know, something that...
Just watch it and enjoy this intrigue.
And learn more about that era. I mean, people don't realize the Cold War almost set us into a place where nuclear war was going to happen between us and the communists.
First of all, I'm going to brainwash you a little bit because you go all crazy. You get so into this, you have 1,000 notes. I got to hone you down a little bit.
You will love The Princess Bride. You will love The Princess Bride.
No, I will not love Princess Bride, nor The Apartment, nor Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. But I will tell you, Joe DeCookie, that we are going someplace, but because I am brainwashed and I am going to hit you with this gavel, that we don't know where we're going until we go there.